So, like I said, this is certainly not going to be a complete list of any funding scheme that's available anywhere in the world, but it's rather a guide around where you can start looking. So I'm not going to go into any detail about each and every one funding scheme that I'm going to present. It's more about where you can find the information, where to go next, because you've now learned, or maybe you've already known some of what we talked about. You now know how to shape your idea, how to phrase your question, how to involve the public and patients and service users, how to do your literature search. Now you need the money, now you need the cash. So how do you get started? What's really, really important and cannot be overstated is that your proposal, your project, must be a good match with the funder. So it's really key that you find the right funder, the right scheme, the right call for your topic and the scale of your research. So what do I mean by scale? If you're doing for example, if you're doing a single site study just in your local hospital, that's going to be a very, very different study from doing something that's multi-center across 50 hospitals in the UK. So again, if you're just doing your study locally or just in Wales, other funders might be interested in if you were doing a study across the UK or even beyond in other European countries, for example. Are you doing an early phase or a late phase study? So by early phase, I mean developing an intervention, for example, or assessing the safety of an intervention, assessing the feasibility of running a trial, versus late phase would be more like gathering definitive evidence and something that's going to be practice changing potentially. Early phase study can also be something that's more basic science, lab science, more biological versus pharmacological, versus something that's type of effectiveness study, how to implement it in the real world. And whether it's a pilot or feasibility study, again, this is linked to whether it's single site or multi-center, whether it's early or late phase. Is it going to be exploratory? Is it going to be confirmatory? But also, what resources do you need in terms of data collection? Will you be doing primary data collection, or are you just using, I shouldn't say just, because it can be quite a big undertaking, but are you not actually collecting your own data, but rather making secondary use of data, which is something most funders really like because it's an efficient way of making use of existing resources. And secondary data use can be anything from performing a meta-analysis or a systematic review to a reanalysis of existing data, or using data, routinely collected data that sits in the SAIL database, for example, or NHS Digital in England, and or databases that are hosted by service providers. We even have studies, school data collected by the police. So any kind of routinely collected data, that's something that funders really encourage you to do if possible, rather than, I suppose it's another example of just reinventing the wheel. If the data already exists, it is an inefficient use of resources if you go back to primary data collection. And then another consideration is what type of grant you're going for. So are you interested in a fellowship, which can be a PhD studentship, which can be a postdoc fellowship, where the focus is very much on your personal development as a researcher? And a large part of the fellowship grant so there will be money for your project, but there will also be an expectation that you attend events and undertake activities around personal development training, both methods training and what might be considered soft skills. So that's a type of grant that you would go for fellowship, versus project grant, which is clearly focused on one project with some opportunities for development. For example, if you need training on a specific method that's required for this project, then you might be able to include that in the grant, but it is really about the project. And then there's program grants, which can be a combination of both, but usually include multiple smaller projects or work packages that are connected to each other and that form this bigger program of research. So these are the general considerations. Now, where do you start looking? The obvious place to look at when you're based in Wales is Health and Care Research Wales, which is the biggest funder here in Wales for the Welsh Government. So they have a number of different grant schemes, for example, studentship awards every year, PhD studentships in health research, as well as social care research. They also have fellowship awards, again, health and social care, separate schemes in alternating years for people who already have a PhD, and these are open to academics as well as people working in the NHS or social care. And then these are the fellowship type grant schemes, and then there's the project type grant schemes, which are the research funding scheme for social care and health, as well as the well-known research for patient and public benefit, which also funds smaller projects with a maximum of 230,000. So feasibility studies, qualitative studies, smaller research projects can be funded by that. And this call opens every year in late summer, and deadline is sometime in October or November. And there are a few other grants, such as the NHS Research Time Award, which is for people working in the NHS, and it funds a proportion of your time to develop further research applications and engaging research activities. This NHS Research Time Award is primarily for clinicians, consultants, for example, whereas the so-called RCBC, or Research Capacity Building Collaboration, is more focused on allied health professionals such as physiotherapists, pharmacists. And I've got the links here on each slide. Again, very happy to share the slides at the end, so you don't need to copy them or take screenshots. So the RCBC Collaboration funds, that's the one for allied health professionals, funds fellowships that they call first into research, so people who haven't been research active, as well as PhD and postdoctoral fellowships, and they have one call every year, I believe. Other opportunities for fellowships and studentships include NIHR, so that's a UK-wide call, but people based in Wales are eligible for these calls. So they have pre-doctoral fellowships, doctoral fellowships, as well as what they call advanced fellowships. So that's basically anything from postdoctoral to very established researchers or NHS professionals. And there's the Medical Research Council. Again, they have different types of studentships, non-clinical as well as clinical, postdoctoral schemes, and then for transition to independence versus transition to leadership, which are career development awards and clinician scientist fellowships. There's also include a link for the so-called clinical academic research partnership, where the applicant can work with with an academic group on a project, and again, that's a specific type of fellowship that they fund, and we have had multiple successful applicants from Wales over the years. If you're looking to do a PhD project, another opportunity is KES2, which is the Knowledge Economy Skills Scholarships. That's a Welsh scheme. There are two sub-schemes, KES East and KES West, West in East Wales, and these are co-funded with an industry partner. So if if your project involves an industry partner in Wales, then this might be the right funding. So these are fellowships, studentships, and some of the more local funding schemes. Then there's the whole wide world of charity funding, and there are way too many charities, medical research charities in this country that fund research. I just included a few logos here. They're obviously very well-known charities such as Cancer Research UK or British Heart Foundation that have a charity shop on every high street. But it is really about finding the right funder. So if you can find a charity, a very specialized charity that's the right fit for your specific project, then your chances of getting funded will be much higher than if you apply to an all-comers scheme where you have to compete with all sorts of other ideas, and you might not be as high up on the priority list as with such a very specialized funder. And these can be organizations such as Mesothelioma, I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing this right, UK, which, for example, funds research into asbestos-related cancers. And then the Waterloo Foundation, which is a Cardiff-based foundation, funds research into very rare childhood conditions. So it is really worth looking for charities, especially if you don't need a huge amount of money. We know that after COVID, none of these charities will be wallowing in money at the moment, but many of them still have at least reduced funding calls. And if you're not sure where to start looking, my advice would be go to the website of the Academy of Medical Research Charities, AMRTC. They have this funding finder interface on their website. This is just a screenshot where you can, so they have listed around 150, 160 odd charities that fund medical research in the UK, and you can search that website, and they will have lists of open and upcoming funding calls. And in addition to these more specialized funders, there's also a number of cross-specialty funders, charity funders, such as the Health Foundation, Medical Research Foundation, Rose Trees Trust, BMA Foundation, Wellcome. They all fund, and because they are some of the bigger organizations, they continue to fund medical research across disciplines, across specialties, despite COVID. So some of them haven't suffered as much as the smaller charities. If your research is more about social care, on the interface of social care and healthcare, you might want to look at funding opportunities with the Nuffield Foundation or the National Lottery Community Fund. And then if you're looking for a really big grant, remember we can still, even after Brexit, we can still apply for European grants such as Horizon Europe, which is the new Horizon 2020. But then there's also the National Institute for Health Research, and our government here in Cardiff Bay pays several £million to the government in Westminster every year, so that we as researchers in Wales are eligible to apply for these UK-wide calls, and we should make use of that. And we're not eligible for all of them, but the ones in green that you can see here, so the fellowships, which I've talked about on the previous slide, but also some of the larger grant schemes, including the Public Health Research Programme, which funds research into public health, health services and delivery research. Again, it's in the name. The NIHR Health Technology Assessment, or HTA program, which funds large phase 3 type studies, confirmatory studies of health technologies, which can be pharmacological, non-pharmacological interventions. So that's the scheme where you would apply if you wanted to run a big RCT, for example. And then the efficacy and mechanisms evaluation, or EME program, which funds research that comes before you can apply for a HTA grant. So it's more like phase 2 efficacy studies, placebo-controlled studies, smaller studies that look at mechanisms of evaluation. And you can find them all here. So these are the 4 grants that you can apply as a researcher based in Wales. You can apply to lead on a grant. Some of the others we cannot apply as researchers based in Wales. We cannot apply to these as leads, project leads, but we can still be co-applicants or co-leads. For example, the program grants for applied research, or the research for patient benefit. So we can't apply to research for patient benefit in the UK-wide scheme, because we have our own research for public and patient benefit, the RFPVB, that's funded by Health and Care Research Wales. But we can still be a co-applicant of a study led from England. What's really helpful is, again, the links at the bottom here. What's really helpful is the funding finder on the NIHR website, where you can search different funding calls, upcoming funding calls, depending on the type of funding, specialty, work streams. So they have researcher-led calls, where you can basically come up with your own idea and submit it. They have themed calls. For example, they recently had a theme on sepsis and antimicrobial stewardship. And then they have commissioned calls. That's the majority here, where they want you to, and Claire showed an example of a commissioned call in one of her slides, where they basically specify the question they want answered and ask you to design the study and apply for that. So here's an example. That's a recent screenshot. Doctoral fellowship round 6 and advanced fellowship round 6 are coming up. So that's where you can basically submit any kind of topic that fits the broad remit. Whereas 2118 lumbar fusion for lower back pain, that's a very specific commission call, where they will specify the exact research question in PICO terms, and they will give you some flexibility in terms of the design. But basically, if you happen to work in this area, and that's not the only one, there's many of these commissioned calls here. If you happen to be an expert in the area already, you'll stand a much greater chance of actually winning the grant than if you apply for a call where you have to compete with absolutely everyone who's submitted an idea. Again, it's about finding the right project for your idea and being the right person to answer a specific research question, convincing the funder that you are the right person. What's also helpful is this website, where you can browse all funded projects, because they are spending taxpayers' money, so they have to be really open about it. You can also look at meetings, panel minutes from NIHR funding panel meetings, and which applications got funded and which didn't. So that can also be really helpful when you're developing your own grant application, to see what successful applications look like and what they have already funded. The Medical Research Council, UKRI, which is part of the UKRI, another national funder that funds research, medical research across a wide range of areas and specialties: infections, immunity, molecular medicine, neuroscience, mental health, population medicine, global health. And they also have different types of grants. Again, just have a look at the website in your own time. They have this funding finder, which is I've ticked MRC in the blue box on the left-hand side, which gives me all current and upcoming funding opportunities related to medical research. So we can see 48 opportunities here. Anything from studentships, career development, fellowships to project grants. And I think they also do commission calls. And MRC and UKRI, similar to the NIHR database of funded research, they also have a similar database, which is called the UKRI Gateway. This is the link where you can look at successfully funded projects, which again is really helpful when developing and shaping your own idea. And now my screen is frozen for some reason. Nope, here we go. So I think that there's plenty of opportunities, and I'll give you the slides. You'll have all the links, but please come to us, discuss the RDCS, come and discuss your project with us early, and we'll be more than happy to look at funding opportunities for your specific idea and your specific project. Even more links, so Health and Care Research Wales, for example, they have a very useful list that they update regularly on their website of current funding opportunities, not just their own calls, but also from other organisations, NIHR, as well as some charities and other funders. Prime Centre Wales and MRC have similar lists on their website. And that's the end of my presentation. Thanks very much, and happy to take questions.
Yeah, so well,